Hi, my name is Brooke Frazier, and this is Robert Counts. In class, we studied a concept about gender roles in relation to the media. We decided to take this concept to the University of Tennessee campus. And what better place to start than with the Women's Studies program on campus?
Dr. Donna Sherwood is a women's studies professor at the University of Tennessee. She has been teaching at the university for 45 years. Going into the interview, Robert and I both only knew Dr. Sherwood's last name and title, so we both assumed she was a male. Little did we know we were falling into the same fallacy that Sherwood had seen time and time again.
I was an English instructor in 1967, and during the interview, the head of the department told me that I would have to understand that the man who had been interviewed just before me had a family to support and would have to be paid more money. At the time, I didn't even resist. I thought I did understand that. It didn't dawn on me till years later that I had a husband to support at the time, but nobody even thought about that.
In Romy Frolick's piece, The Friendliness Trap, Romy asserts that women within professional settings are subject to being stereotyped as excellent communicators and motherly figures that will always be looked up to, carry emotional weight in the office. This is a stereotype that might inhibit women from advancing within their professional setting, and the actual characteristics of women get very skewed, according to Dr. Sherwood.
Stereotypes are clear, but I think the actual behaviors are not clear. They get very muddied, and things that would normally be considered feminine, I'm very good at. I can be very cooperative, and I can be sweet even when I have to, but I'm not really. So what you see is not always what you get. And I think we have to be aware of that with these stereotypes about characteristics of women and men. Betty Friedan says that in the middle-class household, the mother is the tyrant. She creates a comfortable concentration camp for her children so that they will all know what the rules are, what the restrictions are, and will follow them. And she keeps that running very smoothly if she can. Now, we don't think of mothers as dictators, but there you go.
Dr. Sherwood finds that in her position as a teacher, the students tend to think of and react to male and female teachers quite differently.
I think students prefer male teachers. I think students respond to male teachers differently from the way they respond to female teachers. I think my students really expect me to care about their problems in a way they would never expect a male professor to care. I think my students expect me to speak politely in a way they don't demand of a male professor, so that when I actually use the word fuck in the classroom, it's like, oh. Now, I know they have male professors who do that all the time, and probably are used to it and don't ever get gaspy about it.
Another term that comes to play in dealing with women in a professional setting is the glass ceiling. This incorporates the idea that there are unbreachable barriers that inhibit women from rising to the top of the corporate ladder.
One of my colleagues is one of the brightest people I've met. She has a good PhD in anthropology. She probably will never be hired full-time over there. Not necessarily because she's a woman, but because as a woman working in a lecturer position, which is what I'm in, you do develop a role that other people, or a role is imposed on you, and it's just assumed that you're not going to go anywhere full-time and that you're not one of those tenurable people, so we become fodder.
Student Alumni Associates President Becca Keyes had a few words of her own to say on this issue.
Of the 4 organization leaders we interviewed on campus, 3 were women, a statistic that would be an oddity in the professionals today. Keyes, however, found herself not upset by men dominating leadership roles.
I might be kind of an abnormality in that it doesn't really upset me, because I myself sometimes tend to trust the male leadership a little bit more, and I don't think that that's rational on my part at all. But I think that our society is slowly moving away from that. But I think it is a process, and I think it's a learning process, and people are learning to trust women, and I do think we'll see a change especially as our generation enters the work field and workforce. I think that there's going to be a lot more change with women leadership. And in the university setting, you know, it doesn't upset me because I haven't ever felt like it's directly affected women's issues on campus, and that's probably why I haven't felt the direct side effects of it.
Next, we decided to move away from the faculty and into the student body. What better place to start than the Central Programming Council president?
We decided to ask some of our interviewees who presided over their organizations whether they found certain roles were dominated by a particular gender, And Central Programming Council President Dyke was eager to chime in concerning the position of secretary.
I don't know of too many male secretaries that we've had. Yeah.
Is there a reason why the secretary you would say is usually a female?
I think that it just sort of, like everybody thinks of, it's probably the same reason why there are a lot of female female like teachers for elementary and high school, etc. And while the nursing industry is a female-dominated field, I think that people, they might find it affront to their masculinity to apply to be a secretary of something, to just type notes.
We decided that since this was a journalism class, we would go to the on-campus television station, TVC, and talk to the president, Anna Patterson.
Another problem women have found in organizations has been harassment. This is an issue that Patterson says rears its ugly head in journalism settings all too often.
I think so. I think that's a very fair statement, and I think we grew up in a culture where we see it on TV and hear it on the radio, and it's more appropriate to make those sexual jokes or joke around with people and think of it in a kidding manner more so than an offensive manner, whereas someone like the women's studies professor might see it more offensive.
But Patterson is convinced that harassment becoming more prevalent is a result of the culture we live in.
Men in our setting tend to be can be very inappropriate around women, making sexual jokes, or I'd say that's probably the extent of it, and in a professional workplace, that could be deemed sexual harassment.
One of the biggest organizations on campus is the Student Government Association, so we decided to chat with President-elect Adam Roddy.
Roddy sees his generation as either oblivious to acts of harassment around them or simply brushing off these acts as just being playful.
I think our generation is a lot more, for lack of a better word, unprofessional, more like friendly in the workplace, less, Mr. So-and-so, how are you doing today, sir? Less of those, and I think sometimes mistreatment like that to our generation can just seem like, I was just joking around with them, and I feel like that's a little bit of a problem. I feel like, the workplace has to be professional. That's why it's a profession. But also I think, if stuff like that's happening, I think students either aren't noticing it or they simply don't even know what's going on. Because that was complete news to me, what you just said regarding the professor and how she'd been treated. And I don't know if that's these matters trying to be quieted down by people or not wanting to get students necessarily involved or what. But I think if stuff like that happens between administrators, it stays there, and it's tough for students to hear about it first. And if they hear about it, it's either rumor, hearsay, or it's just something they feel like is either going to be taken care of or they have no impact on. So I don't know where the miscommunication is happening, but if it is, I really feel like students are unaware or, like you said, just they don't really notice.
I'm Robert Counts. Did you forget my name? Did you think I should be the one sitting on the left? Did you think I should be the one leading this thing? If you thought any of those things, you should probably watch this video again. I'm Robert Counts.
And I'm Brooke Frazier.
And this is our 466 package.